The kidnappers forced my girlfriend to make a choice, between me and her first love, who had just returned from abroad. Only one of us could live. She kissed me but then walked to his side. I'm sorry, Henry Morgan's career is just taking off. I can't let his dreams be shattered. I lost the bet with my grandfather, and since I lost, I went home to inherit the family business. The first thing I did was cut off all partnerships with Henry Morgan's company, crushing his dreams in an instant. Later, my girlfriend came to me, eyes red from crying, swearing that I was the one she truly loved, that she would carve out her heart just to prove it to me. When the curtain in the bridal shop was drawn back, I witnessed the most breathtaking sight of my life. Anna stood under the warm lights, wearing the wedding dress we had picked out together. She looked like an angel. I had to suppress the surge of emotions rising in my chest, stopping myself from tearing up right then and there. 3 years together, and now, I was finally about to marry the woman I loved more than anything. But then, a phone rang, breaking the moment. Anna's face changed instantly. She rushed over, not even caring that her pristine white dress became disheveled as she picked up the call. I knew that ringtone. It wasn't her usual one. It was a special one. When she returned, she looked at me apologetically. There's an emergency at work. I have to go. Would she really set special ringtones for her colleagues? Seeing that I didn't respond, Anna leaned in and kissed the corner of my lips. George Rockefeller, can we come back another day? She knew exactly how to disarm me. I sighed, helpless. All right. Anna hurried off to change and left in a rush. I went back to my office. That afternoon, I received an anonymous call. Anna had been kidnapped. If I wanted to save her, I had to bring $5 million. I didn't hesitate for a second before calling home. My grandfather's voice came through the receiver. Are you sure? If you do this for her, you can never go back to the Rockefeller family. I answered without hesitation. I'm sure. 3 years ago, I made a bet with my grandfather, to live as an ordinary man while dating Anna. Before our wedding, I wasn't allowed to use any of my family's resources. If I broke that rule, I would lose my right to return to the Rockefeller family. But money, power, none of that mattered to me as much as Anna did. I was certain now. As long as we were together, even a simple life would be worth it. Moments later, the family's bodyguards arrived with the cash. We rushed to the location, a warehouse by the sea. The kidnappers took the money and led me inside. But they only allowed me to enter alone. That was when I saw Anna, bound and sitting on the floor. And next to her, tied up in the same way, was a man. He had sharp features and an air of arrogance. I froze. It was Henry Morgan. Anna's first love. Why the hell were they kidnapped together? I immediately sensed something off in Anna's expression. But I didn't dwell on it. I had always known about Henry. Anna had told me that after he left the country, Henry had nothing to do with her. Everyone has a past. I loved Anna, and as long as her present and future belonged to me, I had no reason to care about what came before. And I had been right. Over the past 3 years, our relationship had only grown stronger. We had become the couple everyone envied. Kidnapper gestured at me, urging me to hurry. Anna looked at me, clearly nervous. George, how did you get caught too? Before I could explain, Henry spoke. George Rockefeller? He scoffed. Wait. My family is sending ransom money. After rescuing you, you and Anna are even. My brow furrowed. What do you mean? Henry let out a dry chuckle. Is it that hard to understand? I save you, and in return, you break up with Anna. From now on, stay out of her life. I turned to Anna. She had lowered her head, silent. I couldn't see her expression. She was trembling slightly. Was it fear? My chest tightened. My voice turned cold. That won't be necessary. I moved to take Anna and leave, but before I could, another voice cut in. The man overheard our conversation and found it amusing, like he was enjoying some twisted spectacle. Choose, he said. Only 2 people can leave. One of you stays here. He wasn't speaking to me. He was speaking to Anna. Before I could react, rough hands grabbed me, binding me tightly before shoving me next to Henry. Anna's face turned deathly pale as she looked at me. There was a shimmer of tears in her eyes. I didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. With the bond Anna and I shared, there was no doubt in my mind about what she would do. And just as I had expected, she stepped toward me. Then she kissed me. It was the kind of kiss that shattered my defenses, the one I could never resist. My heart softened instantly. No matter what happened, she had chosen me. And for her, I would give up anything. But then, I froze. Anna walks away, her body trembling as she struggled with herself. Then she looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. And the next moment, she walked past me. She stepped toward Henry. Standing beside him, she lifted her gaze, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry," she said. "Henry's career is just taking off. I can't let his dreams be ruined." It hit me then. I had thought she was looking at me with heartache. But Henry and I were very close together, facing the same direction. She wasn't looking at me at all. She had been looking at him. The choices we make when faced with life and death reveal our truest selves. I looked at Anna, and a bitter taste spread through my chest. Everything was clear now. That special ringtone, it must have been the one she set for Henry. That's why she had reacted so strangely when it rang. It's human nature to seek advantage and avoid danger. I knew what Anna was thinking. Henry, a returning entrepreneur with a promising future, was worth far more than an ordinary man like me. Heat surged through my veins, my blood boiling with the force of my realization, threatening to break my composure. I had believed our love was unshakable. Turns out, it was nothing more than my own pathetic delusion. Even if it costs my life to secure his dream. I stared at Anna, searching for even the slightest hint of hesitation on her face. But she turned her head away, avoiding my gaze. I knew her too well. That was as good as a confession. Even so, I wasn't ready to give up. I refused to believe this was the truth. What if I told you I could give you a better future than he ever could? Henry scoffed, his face full of disdain. Not in this lifetime. Try again after you've reincarnated 10 times. Anna sighed. Her eyes were rimmed red as she spoke softly. George, don't be like this. It's not because of his future. Then it was because she still had feelings for him. It all made sense. Ever since Henry had returned, the pieces had been falling into place, right down to why they had been kidnapped together. But whatever the reason, Anna hadn't chosen me without hesitation. What did that make me? I let out a quiet, self-mocking laugh. Then, as if seeing Anna for the first time, I took a long, deliberate look at her, studying every detail. And then, in my heart, I pressed delete. Anna, from this moment on, we have nothing to do with each other. The moment the words left my mouth, someone entered the room and kicked Henry in the side. It wasn't just a kick, it was an insult. Henry's face flushed red with rage, but despite his anger, he said nothing. The ransom's been paid. Get out. The man then turned to me. You don't have to die. Only then did I understand, the whole thing had been a ploy. Forcing Anna to choose was just a way to pressure Henry's family into paying up faster. But in an unexpected twist, it had also revealed the truth about Anna's heart. They had received double the ransom and decided to let us all go. When I stepped outside, Anna looked mortified. And why wouldn't she be? The stage had been perfectly set. She and Henry were supposed to walk out together, hand in hand, the perfect love story reunited. Who would have thought I'd make it out, too? I didn't spare her a second glance. I didn't return to the home we once shared. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called my grandfather. This ordeal had shown me just how ridiculous my belief in true love had been. Grandfather didn't say much. Come home. Home is always your haven. A mix of emotions churned inside me as the family's driver picked me up. I didn't regret my choice. But I did feel like I owed my family an apology. That night, my assistant delivered a stack of documents, Rockefeller Group's latest business deals. And the first partnership I had to handle was with Henry's company, Infinity Dynamics. Rockefeller Group was not just a household name in Los Angeles, it was a global powerhouse. With its immense resources and deep pockets, countless companies fought for a chance to collaborate with us. Henry's Infinity Dynamics was no exception. I shook my head and set the proposal aside. To be fair, Henry hadn't actually done anything wrong. I don't have to target him. Rockefeller Group invested in an overwhelming number of projects each year. If Henry truly had the ability, the company wouldn't mind giving him a chance. My phone suddenly rang. Anna. I hesitated for a second before picking up. She sounded uncertain, hesitant. How are you? Why aren't you home? I thought for a moment before answering. I'm not going back. I don't need anything from that place. Just pay me back the down payment, I'll sign the house over to you. $5 million, my last expense for Anna. I was leaving everything in the past, including that apartment. A luxury high-rise in the city center, something I had intended to secure our future together. But dreams shatter fast. I wasn't even going to bother paying off the rest of the mortgage. Anna seemed guilt-ridden. Infinity Dynamics is hiring right now. The pay is good. Henry said, as compensation, you could go straight in. If I talk to him, you might even get a manager position. A manager? I almost laughed. I had always told Anna I was a software engineer, overworked and constantly pulling late nights. In reality, I had been training within one of Rockefeller Group's subsidiary companies. My family had indulged my so-called independence but had never let me waste my time. 3 years of love wasn't a lie. Anna did have feelings for me. But she probably loved Henry more. It made sense. Between an ordinary programmer with no apparent future and a returning entrepreneur, she made the pragmatic choice. But Henry, was he really willing to hand out management positions just to repay a favor? My frown deepened. I might need to reassess this partnership. No need, I said simply. Anna sounded disappointed. Are you still mad at me? George, you need to grow up. Even if we can't be together, you have to think about your future. Don't throw away a great opportunity just because you're upset. You'll meet other girls one day. This would at least give you an edge. I paused, then let out a quiet laugh. Was she really trying to help me? Or did she just want to ease her cheap guilt and maintain her image of kindness? The Anna I thought I knew felt more like a stranger now. This conversation is over. I ended the call and signaled for my assistant. Have the risk department reassess Infinity Dynamics before we move forward with the partnership. I had a good night's sleep, and the next morning, I headed to the office. Since my custom suit wasn't ready yet, I just wore my usual clothes. Clothes were meant to serve people, not the other way around. I never cared about such things. But clearly, someone did. The moment I arrived at Rockefeller Group, I ran into Henry, who was standing there with a frown, eyeing me from head to toe. Anna told me you turned down my offer. I thought you were just being ungrateful, but it looks like you found something better, landed yourself a job at Rockefeller Group, huh? I shook my head. Henry had already proven he favored personal connections over real talent. Now it seemed his judgment and attitude weren't much better. I'm not here looking for a job. Before I could say more, the head of HR hurried over, breathless and apologetic. Sorry, sir. I apologize for the delay. I hope you haven't been waiting too long. His tone was respectful, overly so. Henry scoffed. It seems that the Rockefeller Group is not as high-end as people say. Why would they flatter a programmer like that? The HR director's face darkened immediately. What are you talking about? This is us. I raised a hand, cutting him off. Let's go. The meeting's about to start. Without sparing Henry another glance, I stepped into the elevator. The risk department had reevaluated Infinity Dynamics and uncovered some concerns, leading to a temporary halt on the partnership. At noon, I headed downstairs to the company cafeteria for lunch. Midway through my meal, a commotion erupted outside. Someone was causing a scene. The HR director, who was sitting with me, smirked. It's that Henry from Infinity Dynamics. The risk department froze his deal, and now he's demanding an explanation. He shook his head. Acts like Rockefeller Group belongs to his family. Spoiled and delusional. I chuckled but said nothing. I knew the Morgan family, they had only risen to wealth in the past few years. It was obvious their children hadn't received the right kind of upbringing. Henry had gone abroad for experience, but it seemed he hadn't learned much. As security escorted him out, our eyes met through the glass doors. His expression was priceless, pure disbelief. Seeing me eating in the executive dining area, he must have assumed I had just aced some miracle job interview and been hired on the spot. I treated the whole thing as nothing more than an amusing little episode. But that evening, Anna called. If this is about the apartment, I'll have someone handle the paperwork for you. Anna quickly clarified, no, it's not that. Then, after a brief pause, she hesitated. Henry wanted me to ask if you could connect him with Rockefeller Group's senior executives. He'd like to take them out to dinner. Rockefeller Group's senior executives? I thought about it for a moment. Technically, I was one of them. But I had no interest in going, nor did I want to ask anyone else to help. Something about this felt off. As far as Henry was concerned, I was just a new hire. What kind of connections did he think I had? Then it hit me, did he think I had pulled strings to get into Rockefeller Group? Back when I bought the apartment, Anna had subtly tried to probe whether I had powerful friends helping me. Now that she was with Henry, their suspicions had probably escalated. And honestly, they weren't wrong, except the person they were guessing at was me. I had always relied on my own effort, never wasting a single moment to better myself. My grandfather had seen all of it. That's why he had no hesitation in handing Rockefeller Group's affairs over to me. I was just about to turn Anna down when she spoke again, lowering her voice. Just this once. Help me, and Henry will make it worth your while. I froze. Was she seriously trying to bribe me? Rockefeller Group is just a company, she continued. You're just an employee. What kind of future do you really have? You might as well take advantage of your position while you can. She sounded like she was genuinely looking out for me. Don't worry about Henry, I'll talk to him. I'll make sure you get even more out of this. The way she said it, as if she had complete control over Henry, as if she were some indispensable figure in his life, it was laughable. Did Anna even realize what she was saying? How could she speak so casually about something that was outright corruption? How had she convinced herself this was normal? This level of self-centeredness was staggering. When I didn't respond, she added, if you help, I can take a little off the amount I owe you for the apartment. I let out a dry chuckle. You're so devoted to Henry, but he won't cover it for you? Anna hesitated. The pause told me everything. I haven't asked him yet. We just got together, it'd be awkward to ask for money. I had nothing left to say. I no longer knew if the 3 years we spent together had been convenience, the best she could get at the time, or just another carefully played game. But one thing was clear, whenever a better option appeared, she had no problem discarding the old one. And one day, she'd do the same to Henry. I should have felt hurt. Instead, I laughed. All right. I'll set up the meeting. But whether it works out is up to Henry. Anna was thrilled, eagerly promising I'd be well compensated. I shook my head. Now that I was back at Rockefeller Group, I wasn't about to let them do anything that could harm the company. I would go to this dinner myself. And make sure they gave up on the idea altogether. The restaurant Henry had chosen was undeniably upscale, clearly, he had put in a lot of effort. But that didn't change the fact that this was nothing but backdoor dealings. I despised people trying to win contracts through connections. If anything, this only convinced me that Infinity Dynamics needed an even higher risk classification. On my way to the private room, I happened to pass another dining area and caught sight of Marcus, the head of risk management, and Luca, the head of HR. They were in a business meeting, discussing actual deals. The moment they saw me, they almost got up to greet me, but I waved them off, no need. They were here for work. I was here for a personal dinner. No reason to mix the two. When I arrived at the private room where Anna and Henry were waiting, I found them already seated. It was obvious they had both put in effort to dress for the occasion. Henry was in a sharp, tailored suit, and Anna wore an elegant cocktail dress, looking beautiful as ever. But the moment they realized I had arrived alone, with no executives behind me, Henry's smile vanished instantly. Just you? His voice turned cold. Didn't you say you'd set up a meeting with senior management? I sat down, unbothered. You can tell me. Henry scoffed, his tone dripping with disdain. You think knowing a few people makes you somebody? If it weren't for Anna, I wouldn't even have considered coming to you. Anna, too, chimed in, her voice laced with persuasion. George, stop joking. This is serious. Her gaze held something else, reproach. Henry leaned back, crossing his arms. Let me guess. Are you pretending to be influential just to save face? I checked my watch. You have 30 minutes. The casual way I said it made them exchange glances. Anna's face shifted into disappointment. Her voice turned icy. George, I know I hurt you, and you're angry. But this is a win-win situation. If you had even a little common sense, you'd know what to do. If you're stuck at the bottom, you should grab every chance to climb up. No wonder you've accomplished so little. You can't even recognize what really matters. I stared at Anna, the woman I had once loved with all my heart. Had she always been this person? Or had she become this way? A moon that had fallen to the ground no longer shone. Whatever sympathy I had left for her evaporated. I let out a quiet laugh. You mean like you, grabbing every chance to climb? Anna's face instantly hardened. Her expression turned ugly. "What's that supposed to mean?" she snapped. I stood up. "I said I'd set up a meeting, and I did. Nothing more to say. I'm leaving." Henry sneered, unable to contain his mockery. "Just you? What makes you think Rockefeller Group would listen to you?" The words had barely left his mouth when a voice called from the doorway, polite, yet carrying an unmistakable weight. "Mr. Rockefeller, I hope we're not intruding." I turned toward the entrance. Standing there were Marcus, the head of risk management, and Luca, the head of HR. Henry might not have known my identity, but he sure as hell recognized Marcus. After all, Marcus was the one who put the Infinity Dynamics partnership on hold. The sneer on Henry's face froze in an instant. Anna's expression twisted in disbelief. They both turned to look at me. I chuckled. "No, you're not intruding. I was just about to leave." Without sparing Henry and Anna another glance, I turned and headed for the door. Coming here was already more than generous on my part. Anna was still frozen in shock, but Henry reacted quickly, stepping forward to block my path. A strained smile stretched across his face, the abrupt shift in attitude making his expression look awkward and forced. "Mr. Rockefeller, we haven't finished our discussion yet." I gave him an amused look. "I gave you 2 chances. Both times, you chose to talk about something else, didn't you? So it seems your urgent matter wasn't that important after all." I threw Anna's own words right back at them. Anna looked uneasy, opening her mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. Henry, however, paled instantly. He took a deep breath, then reached for a glass of wine on the table. "It was my mistake, I failed to recognize who I was dealing with. Let me drink 3 cups as an apology to you, Mr. Rockefeller." I raised a hand, stopping him before he could down the first glass. "With someone like you running Infinity Dynamics, I don't see a future for us working together." This wasn't about personal grievances. It was simply a business decision. Henry was reckless, arrogant, and more interested in connections than capability. That kind of person was a liability. Rockefeller Group had countless potential partners, we didn't need one like him. Without waiting for a response, I walked out the door. Outside, Marcus and Luca mentioned that our other potential partner, Collins Group, was proving to be a tough negotiator. They weren't high enough in rank to handle it alone, so they needed me to step in. I entered their private room and seamlessly took over the conversation. Soon, the atmosphere warmed, and the discussion flowed effortlessly. The meeting was going well, but at some point, I felt a gaze lingering on me. I looked up just in time to see a figure quickly turning away. The hem of a dress disappeared beyond the doorway. It was a dress I had just seen. Anna's. I shook my head. It didn't matter anymore. We were strangers now, there was nothing left to care about. As the conversation continued, one of the Collins family representatives suddenly remarked. "The Rockefeller family banquet is in a few days, isn't it? A grand event for such a promising young man, must be something your grandfather arranged for you." I smiled. "Yes, and we would be honored to have you attend." "Wouldn't miss it," he replied with a nod. With my involvement, the negotiations wrapped up smoothly. As we left, Marcus turned to me. "What should we do about Infinity Dynamics?" I replied without hesitation. "Follow standard company procedures. Whatever happened to Infinity Dynamics from here on out wasn't my concern." The driver took me home. Preparations for the banquet were already underway. My return to the Rockefeller family was official, and my grandfather was set on announcing my status as his successor. He refused to keep it low-key, insisting on a grand event. I didn't argue. Anna had called me countless times. I didn't answer a single one. I blocked her. I already knew what she wanted to say, but it didn't matter anymore. The past was truly behind me. Or so I thought. On the night of the banquet, Anna and Henry showed up. I had forgotten that the invitations extended to many prominent families, including the Morgans. I greeted them politely, the same way I acknowledged any unfamiliar guests. For a brief moment, I thought I caught a flicker of hurt on Anna's face. Something eerily similar to the expression she had when she was mildly upset with me in the past. I almost laughed. Then I moved on to greet my other guests. My custom suit had arrived, but even without it, I knew I was the center of attention tonight. I had been groomed for this moment, my lineage, abilities, and presence set me apart in every elite circle. As I stood on the stage, I let my gaze drift over the crowd. Henry's expression was dark, his jaw clenched. Anna, on the other hand. She was staring at me with that same familiar look of admiration. Did she ever truly love me? Or had she only ever been drawn to the power and status that came with me? The answer didn't matter. There wasn't a trace of nostalgia in my eyes. But Anna. She wasn't the type to give up. She had said it herself, she would seize every opportunity to climb higher. She intercepted me outside the crowd, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. George, I didn't know your identity. That's the only reason I said those awful things. But everything I said was for your own good. Why did you keep this from me? Did you never trust me in our 3 years together? I stared at her quietly, realizing that after all this time, she still felt like a stranger. The Anna I had loved, the vibrant, real Anna, had only existed in my dreams. And now, I was finally awake. A cool breeze swept past, ruffling the loose strands of hair near her temple. I stepped forward. Her eyes lit up with hope. I reached out, tucking the stray strands gently behind her ear. Then I smiled. Are you done talking? I took a step back, far enough to put real distance between us. Henry's right behind you. Anna's expression froze. That hopeful gleam in her eyes disappeared in an instant. Did he know you sneaked off to find me? I left her with that parting remark and walked away. Henry wouldn't dare confront me. But Anna? She was about to learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end of his anger. Sure enough, their argument erupted behind me moments later. On my way back, I passed through the garden and spotted a girl. She had twisted her ankle. She was beautiful, almost doll-like, but she was crying miserably. I didn't have the heart to ignore her. So I helped her to her car. Just as she was about to leave, she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and whispered, "You're a good person." Then she added, "We'll meet again." I didn't think much of it at the time. After the banquet, my life became overwhelmingly busy. Between handling work and dealing with family matters, I barely had time to breathe. When I finally got a moment to relax, I ran into Anna outside my office building. To be honest, Henry hadn't been idle either. He had been constantly trying to establish ties with me, attempting to revive the partnership between Rockefeller Group and Infinity Dynamics. But my secretary had blocked every attempt. Interestingly, he had stopped using Anna as an intermediary, probably still holding a grudge over what had happened at the banquet. So I hadn't expected Anna to come looking for me. It had been some time since we last saw each other. She looked exhausted, no longer the radiant, confident woman she once was. With people coming and going around us, I could already feel curious gazes in our direction. To avoid unnecessary attention, we stepped into a nearby cafe. I looked at her and asked, amused, "You're here to see me. Doesn't Henry mind?" Her expression stiffened for a brief second before she forced a smile. "He knows." I could already guess how she had framed it to Henry, probably using business as an excuse, just like before. Just like when she tried to convince me to accept Henry's compensation in exchange for networking. Anna hesitated before speaking again, stealing a cautious glance at me. "I know you'll never work with him. That's not why I came." She paused, then added softly, "I came to thank you. A lawyer contacted me about the house, he said the loan has been paid off." I cut her off before she could finish. "Did you misunderstand something?" Confusion flickered across her face. "You never paid me back the down payment," I explained. "So I sold the house. But since a mortgaged property isn't easy to transfer, I cleared the loan first and signed it over to someone else." I leaned back in my seat. "Didn't the lawyer explain? The house isn't yours." Anna's dazed expression quickly twisted into rage. Her eyes turned red as she glared at me. "George, you're being too cruel. You have so much money, was it really that hard to take care of me? 3 years. We were together for 3 years. Does that mean nothing to you?" I stared at her, genuinely stunned by how she could say that with such entitlement. I let out a quiet sigh. "I was taking care of you," I said flatly. "That's why I sent a lawyer to talk to you." I met her gaze, my tone calm but firm. "And did you forget? It was you who gave up on me first. You probably don't know this, but before I even entered that warehouse, I had already paid $5 million to ransom you." Anna's breath caught. She looked at me in complete shock. I continued, my voice steady. "You could have left with me that night. But what did you do instead? You chose to let me die so Henry could chase his dream." I gave her a small, emotionless smile. "I told you I could give you a better future, Anna. But you rejected it. I leaned forward slightly, my voice quiet but cutting. So tell me, what right do you have to question me now? Anna's face went deathly pale. In the face of cold, undeniable truth, any excuse she had was meaningless. I didn't say another word. I paid the bill and walked away. My family arranged a blind date for me, this time, with a girl from the Collins family, a family we had previously partnered with. At first, I wasn't interested. But then I thought about how I had spent 3 years chasing an illusion, only to end up empty-handed. So I decided to approach this with an open mind. I never expected to see her again. The girl who had twisted her ankle that night. Her name was Selena Collins. Of course, her ankle had long since healed. When she saw me, her eyes curved into a playful squint, a hint of mischief in her smile. See? I told you we'd meet again. She was adorable when she squinted like that. I couldn't help but chuckle. You also said I was a good person. Selena winked. What I meant was, I think you'd make a great boyfriend. I extended my hand to her. Then, let's get along well. She glanced at my outstretched hand and instead high-fived me. Even if this was set up by our families, I think you're pretty great. Let's start as friends first. Selena was a breath of fresh air. She had taken over her family's charity foundation, constantly traveling and immersed in work. Whenever she was on a trip, she would send me photos of breathtaking landscapes, claiming she was showing me the world beyond my office. I found it hilarious. Along with the photos, she always brought back little gifts, nothing expensive, but always thoughtful. I made sure to set aside time to do the things she loved with her. And before I knew it, I had truly let her into my heart. The memories of Anna, the pain, the betrayal, began to fade into the past. The next time I heard about Infinity Dynamics, it was through a casual conversation with Luca over coffee. Henry's company had run into major financing issues. The Morgan family had no choice but to bail him out, sinking a fortune into his mess. But Henry was a terrible businessman, and soon after, even bigger problems arose. The Morgans, already not particularly powerful, were now drowning in disasters of their own making. Good thing we cut him off early, Marcus chimed in, sounding relieved. If we had gotten involved, it would have been a nightmare. I also received a few mysterious calls, the kind where no one spoke on the other end. One time, Selena overheard and casually asked, "Who is it?" The line immediately went dead. I knew who it was. Anna. Henry was the type to lash out when things went wrong. With his business failing, he would blame everyone but himself. I used to treat Anna like a princess, and I guess she couldn't accept the gap, so she came to me for comfort. But it was too late. I had already moved on. One evening, Selena suddenly pulled out a ring. Made of clay. She held it up with a proud grin. Don't underestimate this, it's made from the soil of the village of longevity. I made it myself and I'm giving it to you, so you can live a long, healthy life. I looked at her, earnest, a little shy, but completely sincere. Warmth spread through my chest. For the first time, I realized how foolish I had been back then, thinking that hiding my identity would help me find true love. Without thinking, I reached out and gently pinched her cheek, pulling her into my arms. Let's be together, Selena. She murmured, what kind of confession is this? Other people start with flowers, where's mine? I kissed her forehead softly. They're already waiting for you. Because in the garden of the villa I had prepared for her. An entire courtyard of flowers had already bloomed just for her. Anna came to see me one last time. She said she wanted to say goodbye. She was leaving the city for good. She looked terrible, a bruise shadowed her eye, clear evidence that Henry had hit her. As she stared out at the towering skyscrapers, her eyes were filled with emptiness. When I first arrived in this city, she murmured, I had never seen buildings so tall. I told myself that one day, I would plant my roots here. I would build a good life for myself. She let out a bitter laugh. Never thought this would be how it all ends. Henry's family had sold and mortgaged everything to cover his debts, but in the end, it still wasn't enough. Infinity Dynamics officially declared bankruptcy. Henry's dream of entrepreneurship had collapsed under a mountain of debt. He fell apart, drinking heavily, becoming violent. Anna couldn't take it anymore. She chose to leave. I offered a simple truth. Knowing when to cut your losses isn't a bad thing. She turned to look at me, her gaze filled with undeniable sorrow. You're with her now, aren't you? The thought of Selena made me smile instinctively. I nodded. Yes. We're doing well. We're planning our wedding. Anna's lips trembled. Then. I wish you happiness. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I guess we won't see each other again, she choked out. So I wanted to apologize. And say goodbye. I treated you terribly before. She didn't need to say it. She had already paid the price. I met her gaze, my voice steady. I was luckier than most. I had the chance to start over. Anna let out a sound between a laugh and a sob, one that sounded even more painful than crying. Of course. You're from a wealthy family. Your fiancé is, too. You always had better resources than people like us. What did you ever have to be afraid of? For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of pity for her. She had no idea. Anna, I said quietly, when I chose to be with you, I was prepared to give up everything. If we had gotten married, I would have severed ties with the Rockefeller family. I only believed in my own ability to give you a good life. She froze. Her eyes widened, her face draining of color. She had never known what I had sacrificed for her. Then, suddenly, she broke down completely, sobbing in uncontrollable regret. I handed her a tissue. It's over now. Take care of yourself. As I stepped outside, I saw Selena walking toward me, balancing 2 cups of coffee in her hands. Her eyes sparkled as she held one out to me. Try this, she said cheerfully. It's a new flavor. I haven't even tasted it yet. I took the cup from her. Then caught her hand in mine. And kissed it gently. Marry me? She blinked, surprised, then grinned. Yes. The autumn sun was warm, the breeze gentle. It was the perfect day.